all my bottoms up babes. This is your soul master Carrie, taking the messiness in life, mixing it up, finding the message, and serving it to you straight. Because healing isn't linear, it's layered, and sometimes the breakdown is just the beginning of your breakthrough. Here, we honor the ache, speak the life into silence, and give the broken pieces a place to belong. This is the space where truth meets tenderness, where your story is sacred and your scars are seen. So breathe deep, open up, listen up, and let the healing begin. Hello, all my bottoms up babes. Today I want to talk about the ego. Yesterday I had shared something on my social media, and basically it was about Social Security. And I feel like every president, every year, every term, every whatever, they're always saying how they're going to take Social Security away. And I feel like I've been hearing about the removal of Social Security since I was like born. And obviously I feel it's kind of a manipulation, thing that they use, that the government uses to control us. Again, it's just my personal opinion. But someone had literally went off the handles on me on social media. They were calling me a libtard, saying I'm a moron. Then when they saw that they weren't getting a negative reaction from me, then they started saying that I'm not a model and that anyone who saw me would know that I'm nowhere near a model, just totally degrading me and overall clearly showing their ego and how they need help with understanding the ego and how it affects you in your life. The ego is actually not necessarily a negative thing or a positive thing, but what the ego does is it does actually make your identity, what you think that you are and what you believe. It defines your character. And, I used to hear the word ego and I would think of it as someone who was stuck up or full of themselves, anyone that basically wanted to make themselves look good. I'd be like, oh, wow, they got a huge ego. And in the end, it's part of our mindset. And like I said, it reflects our character. There's a quote that says, the ego whispers, I am what I have, what I do, and what others think of me. But awareness whispers, you are so much more. So what role does the ego actually play in our soul? And what it is the ego is actually an imagination, and it's not real. It's like a perception. So the ego is a perception to your identity, just as desires are a perception to love. The birth of an ego, that forms in your childhood. It's when you want approval and when you're trying to see what your identity is and, belonging, where you belong and where you feel that you fit in. And the difference between them is taking your ego and using it as for approval and to define your identity and so forth. That would be all using your ego in a negative manner, where the difference between having it in a positive manner is when you have healthy self-esteem and you're ego driven, meaning say you're applying for a job and you want to, show that you're fit for the job, or maybe you're in sales and you want to show that you know exactly what you're selling and you have your heart and soul, wrapped into what it is that you want these people to purchase. That is a healthy part of an ego because you're utilizing it in a source and in a way to show people care and, that you fully believe and you are self-aware and that you have self-esteem and that you feel good about whatever it is that you're doing and selling. Ego in everyday life, your ego reacts to criticism, recognition, and comparison. But signs that your ego is actually running the show is when you feel that you need to be right or taking things personally, comparing or competing constantly, and struggling to let go or to forgive. And that was exactly what that guy did yesterday when I shared the Social Security thing on my social media. You guys, I didn't put oh, I believe this, or oh, this is wrong, or oh, this is right, or anything like that. And just because I had something from the Trump administration with them taking the Social Security away, that is where this person automatically assumed that I was some liberal and that I was I don't know, protesting. And then he was like, you're not even a Republican, like just turning it totally political and totally all wrapped in emotions, where I'll be honest, I'm not even really a political person. I'm just one of, doing right and being a true citizen of the United States and being united and sticking up for just overall morals and respect. I mean, it was really, really absurd. And like I said, when I didn't feed the ego of this one self, it made them even more upset. And when the ego feels threatened, emotional situations, like it triggers that. It triggers your emotional, what you believe and what you feel that is right. And when you recognize your reactions, that they're coming from fear and not from truth, that's when you get your ego out of that mindset of emotional and into, self-awareness and recognizing that you can't allow your ego to be a part of your personality. And you got to watch like how you are to individuals, because, taking that ego and making it healthy is very important, because otherwise you just are emotionally led with everything that you do. And transforming the ego into awareness, this is how doing this, like you get mindfulness, self-observation, pausing before reacting. So if you start feeling yourself getting to that point where you're, like this gentleman that was literally flying off the handle and reacting, take a breath and just say, okay, obviously everyone has a right to their own opinions and their own beliefs. Like, you're not the only person in this world. And surprisingly, if you don't know already, there's always going to be someone that sees something differently and believes different things. Practicing humility and gratitude is really important, and remembering that I am not my thoughts and I'm only the one that observes them. That's where you'll fight your ego. Where is your ego protecting you, and where is it holding you back in life? The end goal isn't to destroy the ego, but to understand it, because once you see it, it'll no longer control you. Now, don't get me wrong, the ego isn't a bad thing. It is necessary, because your ego is the sense of I that allows you to navigate the world. It also allows you to set boundaries, pursue goals, and to protect your identity. It's a psychological structure that gives you the continuity to your whole entire life. But where trouble begins is when the ego makes mistakes and takes it as yourself of being your whole being. And beyond the ego lies connection. When you glimpse at moments beyond the ego, like deep flow, love, when you're in awe or compassion, that's when you experience a sense of unity with others in the world. These moments remind you that your identity is not separate, but it's a part of something larger. So if you have issues with your ego, how can we heal this? First is awareness. Seeing the mask. When you begin to notice that your ego is not you, it's a protective mask from things that you had experienced in life, that's when you start to catch yourself defending an image or craving a validation or fearing a rejection. So instead of judging it, you actually start to observe it with curiosity, like, that's my ego again. Then do comparison, like meet the wound. What is causing you to feel this? Beneath every ego is a defense of hurt. A moment where you felt like unseen, unloved, unsafe. The ego builds like walls to prevent that pain from returning. So now instead of running from that pain, make sure you start to turn towards it with tenderness and be like, okay, this is how I'm feeling. I did my best to stay safe. This isn't reality. I'm just feeling this way because I had been through something before, and start realizing that it's not truly what the outcome is, or it's just the illusion of the perception that you are under from past wounds. Then you have to surrender. You have to release that control. The ego fears uncertainty. It wants to manage outcomes, fix people, and predict the future. Healing means learning to trust, letting go of that illusion that controls equals and just controls the safety, and start to practice surrender. Perhaps like do some prayer or breathing, go in nature, or even just have some silence. Then you got to expand the identity. Get the connection to it. As the ego softens, you begin to feel connected to something larger, like people and nature, life itself. Your sense of me actually goes to we. And you stop needing to prove your worth because you just feel it. You know that you're worth it. You stop degrading your own self and see your own value. And then you need that wholeness, like living in an integrated ego. A healed ego doesn't disappear. It becomes a servant of the soul. You still have boundaries, you still have preferences, you still have ambitions, but they're infused with humility, love, and presence. You no longer take that emotional aspect in a negative manner. You no longer seek power over others, and you actually seek alignment with truth. You start to tell yourself, my ego and my essence can actually coexist together in peace. So what is the practices for the journey? Just take daily awareness and notice that when you feel the need to be right or superior or validated, gently name it okay, wait, that's my ego. Then do an inner dialogue. Speak to your ego like a child. Be firm and kind. Journal. This is so important. Ask, what is my ego protecting me for right now today? Do meditation and prayer. Be in silence and just see where you can have awareness and grow. And do acts of kindness because that'll shift focus from self to connection. It's not, like I said, a bad thing for you to have a negative ego if you are aware of it and you know how to control it. Because if you don't lead with the understanding of where your ego is and where the thoughts are coming from past experiences and old wounds, your ego will always act out in behavioral and in a negative manner because in your mind, you understand whatever it is that your ego is protecting, and you basically outlash on individuals who are in the opposite of whatever your ego is trying to protect. And that's what you need to heal, because you will always see things in a negative manner and react to them in a negative manner if you don't bring peace and awareness to them. If you've noticed these things with yourself and with your ego and the way that you've been reacting to individuals, then it's time that you come home to yourself. The journey of healing the ego isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before fear built the walls around your heart. Each time you pause before reacting, each time you choose honesty over image, each time you choose softness over defense, you return a little bit more true to yourself. You begin to see that the ego was never your enemy. It was just a part of what you forgot and how loved it already was. So breathe. Thank your evil ego for its service and step forward lighter, wiser, and more whole. Not above the world, but deeply within it. I used to think the ego was something that would improve in time, as we mature as individuals, that it would not be so heightened or, would just kind of die down in maturity type things. But clearly I saw that isn't the case, because with that gentleman yesterday attacking me for the social media thing, I swear that gentleman was probably older than myself. So it clearly shows that the ego is actually a reflection and a perception of how you were raised and how you understand things, how emotional things and trauma and such instances have occurred in your life, and how you reflect that in your everyday thoughts and beliefs. And then also just how you understand things. For myself, when I was married, my marriage was a healthy marriage, and I, being from childhood abuse and never healing that, I always knew love as a sacrifice and always, basically having to fight for my love per se. And so before that, my ego was totally different. I would always be defensive and things like that, to defend my love and to fight for my love. And now that I have gone through extensive therapy and such since my divorce and then since my trauma, I realized that no, the ego is actually a perception and an imagination per se, to what I grew up in and what I believed love to be. And so that's why it's really important to make sure that you heal past wounds and you realize things that affect your ego, because sometimes the reality isn't actually what you think it is. The reality is opposite. Like I said, my love and needing to sacrifice something for it, when love actually comes in peace and gives wholeness. I hope this episode helped you today. And if you know anyone that could benefit from it, please do share with them, because my overall purpose of doing this podcast is to help others that are in the darkness or suffering in silence and just don't know how to reach out a hand for help. Or maybe they're just embarrassed, or maybe their ego is also a part of the reason that they don't seek help. Thanks so much, and I can't wait to see and talk to you soon. Take care, and happy Monday to all. Thank you for joining me on Bottoms Up. Much love, and peace be with all of you.